From the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York, this is In the Bleachers, your all information sports show. And we're coming to you live from the studio of CTV in Staten Island, New York. And I'm your host, Eric Rosen. And coming into the studio any second is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jaime, the sports Hixson, would be joining us, but we got a lot of things to get to. But before we do, we just found out some breaking news that took place in Manchester, England. There was a bombing that took place, unfortunately, at a concert venue where Ariana Grande was performing. British police are responding to the incident right now as we speak. I'm just praying for the people that were at that venue that they're all right, that nobody was killed or seriously injured, and hopefully the police, Scotland Yard, or whoever will be involved will get to the bottom of this heinous attack that took place. So my prayers and thoughts are with the people of Manchester, England at this very time. But as they say in life, life goes on, and our show must go on too. So let's get on to the world of sports, starting with the state of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, as you know, in the Eastern Conference picture, we got the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Ottawa Senators, and somebody is crawling along right now to get to his seat, and I think I know who's been crawling. It's the sportsman, Jaime Hixson.
Yes, sir. Sorry that I came in a little late, folks. We had a slight technical difficulty that was going on the other side of the glass, but fortunately things have worked out a little bit, so we can get to the business at hand.
Yes, definitely. And the NHL playoffs right now, we're in the Eastern Conference. You got the Penguins and the Senators. The Senators, of course, getting to this point because they defeated our New York Rangers in 6 games, and the Pittsburgh Penguins defeated the Washington Capitals in 7. So they lost Game 1, the Penguins, at home to Ottawa 2-1 in overtime.
Yep.
And then comes Game 2, and this time around, it was Evgeny Malkin who got a pass in the slot from who passed to Phil Kessel in the slot, and he gets a wrist shot by Anderson, 13:05 into the third period, and the Penguins win Game 2, 1-0, evening the series at 1 game apiece. Then came Game 3 this past Wednesday, one of the most embarrassing crap performances I ever had the unfortunate bearing of witnessing, besides yesterday for basically the Pittsburgh Penguins got outclassed 5-1, including 4 goals scored in the first period, 3 of which were scored in a 2-minute and 18-second span by Mark Matot, Derek Brassard, the former Ranger, on a nice pass behind aging Mark Strait in the shot that beat Fleury. And then, of course, Zach Smith on the backhander wraparound shot. Mm-hmm. After those 4 goals, Marc-Andre Fleury was taken out of the game, replaced eventually by Matt Murray, who, for the most part, has not been seen at all. In fact, he was injured for most of the postseason up until this point. Came in. He did give up a goal. They still lost 5-1 Pittsburgh. So at this time, Ottawa was up 2-1. So what does the Penguins do going to Game 4? They hit back with a vengeance. They're up 3-0 on goals by Brian Dumoulin, Oli Mata, and Sidney Crosby, especially on Sidney Crosby. The goal that he got, he was actually at the right side of Anderson's pad on the initial shot, couldn't get it going. Then for the second time off his own rebound, he gets it past Anderson. Mm-hmm. Eventually, though, Ottawa was able to score 2 goals, but it was too little too late by Clark MacArthur and Tom Piott. They still lost 3-2. So at this time, Pittsburgh tied the series to 2 games apiece. Now we go into Game 5, which was yesterday at 3 o'clock, late afternoon game in Pittsburgh. And Penguins just basically obliterated Ottawa. I mean, They had them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with 7 goals by 7 different players. And 11 these players finished with at least 1 point. Mm-hmm. And they were 3 for 3 perfectly on the power play.
This just goes to show you how much balance the Penguins have. And it also separates teams like the Penguins from other teams. I wonder if Ranger fans are watching right now so they could see what kind of artistry the Penguins are going to. And also, keep in mind, ever since they made the switch to going to Matt Murray in goal, the Penguins haven't missed a beat.
Well, for the most part, Marc-Andre Fleury was at the helm for the Penguins in the postseason. Murray was originally supposed to start the first game, in the first round, but unfortunately was injured before their first round series, against Columbus. And then, it was mostly Fleury. Up until that screw-up on Wednesday, he wasn't doing that bad. It was his second. In fact, the shutout performance he had in Game 2, that was Marc-Andre Fleury's second shutout this postseason, his 10th in his career, and his 62nd postseason win. Murray, though, of course, came in at possibly the right time after Fleury's screw-up, and then, boom, right there. Now, for the foreseeable future, it looks like he's going to be the starting goaltender. Mm-hmm. They play Game 6 tomorrow night in Ottawa. Ottawa does not want to be embarrassed at the Canadian Tire Center, and be eliminated from the playoffs. Do you think they have a chance to win tomorrow night?
They have a chance, but after the way the Penguins just imposed their will on the Senators last night, I think the Penguins wrap this up in the 6th game.
I'm going with Ottawa to win tomorrow night, force a Game 7 back in Pittsburgh, and I think that's where Pittsburgh will probably win it most likely. But at the end, I think we both can agree Pittsburgh is going to win this and going to be in the Cup Finals to defend their championship.
Yeah, but the question is, who are they going to face? Are they going to face Anaheim or Nashville?
Well, speaking of which...
That could be decided tonight.
Right now, Game 3 took place, and it was Roman Josi. Phil Forsberg got the game-tying goal at 3:54 the third period to tie it at 1-1. And then all it took was a penalty by the Ducks. It was a high sticking by from Chris Wagner on Ryan Ellis with about 3:55 left. Then Roman Josi banks the rebound from the right circle past John Gibson, and the Predators win 2-1 to take a nice lead in the series, 2-1. Then comes Game 4, overtime, and Corey Perry gets the game-winning goal off the deflection of PK Subban's stick, 10:25 into overtime. The Ducks win 3-2. So the series is tied at 2 games apiece. Mm-hmm. Then came Game 5, and for yet another, the 18th different person to play for this Predators team, you got Pontus Åberg, who really was in the minors. The Swedish forward who's coming on strong, got his first career playoff goal, 8:59 to play in this game. They ended up winning 3-1. And this is a Predators team without Ryan Johansson, their top goal scorer.
Yeah.
Mike Fisher's not even playing right now, too. And yet they are still contributing like the Penguins. Mm-hmm. This is the first time in the 18 years that this Predators team has existed, they've been this far.
Yeah. And they can, obviously, they're going to try and say the right things, which is they want to focus only on this game. But think about it. 60 minutes away from their very first Stanley Cup final. We remember when this franchise made their debut back in the late 90s. We thought that it was just a ridiculous idea having to bring hockey to
Country Music City.
Yeah, we thought it was a lousy idea bringing hockey to Music City, but now all it took was a little fine tuning and a rebuilding job for them to put together a really good championship caliber team, and I just think that it's coincidental that after the PK Subban trade was made last summer, that the Predators are now 1 game away from going to their very first finals.
Well, having Ryan Johansson, acquiring James Neal, Phil Forsberg on the team, you have and Roman Josi, one of the best two-way defensive players, and Subban, who is not a two-way player. He's mostly known for his defense, but yet he made a hell of a shot in Game 5. In fact, it was one of those crazy slap shots that normally you never see from Subban. Rarely he got a goal in that game, in Game 5. Now they play tonight in Music City. And Music City, at the Bridgestone Arena, they've had country music artists play at their games.
Yeah.
The last 2 games, they had Kelly Clarkson in their last game, Game 4, and Game 3, Keith Urban came. Mm-hmm. They had Vince Gill come, Lady Antebellum. They've had Luke Bryan perform the national anthem. They get these big artists to come to the games. They had the Kings of Leon doing the toss with the rally towels. Nicole Kidman actually did it too at one game.
Yeah.
Of course, she's married to Keith Urban.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Keith lives in the Nashville area still.
Yeah, in fact, Nicole lives there too as well. You know who else lives in Nashville, and you wouldn't believe it? Rusev.
Rusev, the WWE star?
Yeah, he has a house in Nashville. Him
Wow.
and of course, and Lana. They both.
I know Kane lives in Tennessee. In fact, there've been a lot of rumors of Kane running for political office in his adopted home state of Tennessee.
Mayor of Knoxville, actually, he's running for.
Interesting.
I hope he does well. But yes, Nash, they really know how to party, especially when they get goals in that arena. So it's tonight, actually, 8 o'clock, NBC Sports Network. And I got to applaud NBC yet again for the coverage they've given to the NHL these past 5 years. I love the coverage. Every single game is actually exciting to me. And I know a lot of New York fans are probably not watching because they're bitter. And, well, I wouldn't say bitter. They're upset that their team didn't make it.
Well, let's face facts. After the way the Rangers went out with a complete whimper, losing the last 2 games of the Ottawa series, and quite frankly, losing a series that they should have won had it not been for their incompetence in 3 third periods of that series, it just goes to show you that this is why we have teams like the Penguins and why we have teams like the Rangers that are sitting home watching this. And I just got a text message from my friend Lynn. It says Glenn Jacobs is going to run for the mayor of Nashville after all.
Nashville. Well, at least I got a bill right. But, I'll tell you this. As for Nashville, I'm really happy where they've come, especially Pecorini. He's been their outstanding goaltender for this team, top 5 in goals against average and save percentage. For the Ducks, if they want to win tonight, they really got to, they got to be able to take advantage of the fact that Johansson is not playing as well as Fisher. They got to take advantage of that. They got to hone down on the power plays. Gibson now being hurt doesn't help. Patrick Eaves being hurt, who was a 30-goal scorer in the season, does not help. Raquel being hurt doesn't help either. So they got to be able to overcome that. But you got Jakob Silfverberg, who has been absent the last 2 games. He needs to start contributing, as well as Getzlaf and Perry. Those 3 really need to have a performance tonight if the Ducks want to win. The Predators want to win, simple. Get Yossi and Subban really do some good things on defense, and get Arvidsson to contribute tonight. And I think they win. Anyway, now let's go to the NBA. Last Monday was Game 7, the Eastern Conference, between the Wizards and the Celtics, winner take all. And, of course, Isaiah Thomas had a 29-point, 12 assist, and Kelly Olynyk had a career playoff high 26-point performance, including the Celtics having a huge 13-3 spurt in the third quarter where they were trailing 76-72, and an overall 22-25 going into the opening minutes of the fourth, and they end up winning 115-105.
See, this is the difference between teams like the Celtics, who are perennial NBA champions, and other teams that have passed through the playoffs. The Celtics have built their history on having unsung heroes star in the playoffs for them. Going back to Frank Ramsey and JoJo White,
Bird,
John Havlicek and Dave Cowens, and I'm talking about guys that were not necessarily really big stars like Bird or Parrish or McHale, or later on Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen.
the 3 Migos?
Yep. Now, in addition to having Isaiah Thomas, who's become the star in the Celtics, they've gotten. Not only have they built themselves through the draft, which is what championship contenders should do, they've also built with guys like Al Horford, who was their big ticket free agent, made the trade for Isaiah Thomas, and then you have also draft picks like Marcus Smart, who was the best player in last night's game, Olynyk, who wound up having that big Game 7 against D.C.
I think Avery Bradley, too.
And also Avery Bradley, a guy who was pretty much a journeyman before he got to the Celtics, and now he's become one of their best role players.
And Jay Crowder, too.
And Jay Crowder, another guy who wound up getting picked up off the scrap heap.
And really, it's really all centered around Brad Stevens. The brilliant coaching that this guy has given to this team. And yes, it wasn't easy, smooth sailing at first when he came over from Butler. But, with any new coach, it's going to take time, folks. But we live in this day and age where the fans, it doesn't matter what city they're in, they don't want to wait for years for their team to succeed. They want it right now. But the problem is, you have to realize you're at a fine dining restaurant. Things do take time to perfect. It's not like a fast food joint where you're going to get your food like this.
There was a time when the Celtics did have to wait a little while to try and build a contender, because there was a time when they didn't necessarily make all the right decisions personnel-wise. But now that Danny Ainge, a former Celtic player who was a part of 3 title teams, is running the show, it's back to the good old days once again.
And the fact is, they made a trade with Brooklyn, and they got the number 1 overall pick going into the 2017 draft, which is taking place later this month.
And not just this year, the Celtics acquired multiple number 1 draft picks from the Nets. And what did Brooklyn get in return? Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry. Basically a 1-year rental. What did it get Brooklyn? It got them eliminated from the second round of the playoffs in 2014.
Do you see what I'm putting there right now? Do you see that symbol? It's a 0 they got. They got nothing, basically zilch, nada, 9.
And then what
0.
happened after that series? Paul Pierce went to Washington for a year, finished his career with the Clippers. Kevin Garnett lasted a year and a half on the Nets, retired as a Minnesota Timberwolf.
Not shocked.
Jason Terry got himself traded out of Brooklyn before that little mini run that the Nets made. This is why teams like the Celtics have become perennial championship contenders, and why teams like the Brooklyn Nets, the Knicks, the Sacramento Kings, the Philadelphia 76ers have become the quintessence of complete ineptness and incompetence.
Well, now that series is over, the semifinals, let's go into the finals portion of the NBA playoff picture, starting in the Eastern Conference. The Cavaliers, who have had a long layoff since they dominated Toronto in 4 games, they now play Boston Celtics. So they go into Boston this past Wednesday, and LeBron James has his 7th straight 35-plus point performance, 38 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, and then Kevin Love had 32 points, 12 assists. This was a guy who averaged no more than 13 points in the first 2 rounds and had one of his best performances, Kevin Love, in this game. And the Cavaliers end up winning 117-104. In fact, how about in the third quarter when things got a little bit testy? Did you see Thompson was like in Marcus Smart's face at one point? But they still ended up winning the Cavaliers over the Celtics. But you got to understand the Celtics are coming off a Game 7 on Monday. They should have not made it for Wednesday. They should have made it on a Thursday. So I think that was really totally unfair against Boston, if you ask me. And then Friday comes, and this was one of the most, talk about embarrassing performances. If you were a Celtic fan having to watch that, I hope they provided barf bags, because I would be puking too. You had an NBA playoff record, 41-point halftime lead, a franchise record for total points for the Cavaliers, and their 13th consecutive win. That's right. The Cavs defeated the Celtics 130-86. This is not an NBA playoff game. It sounds more like something of a D1 school playing a Division II school in college basketball.
Yeah. At least the Celtics can acknowledge that they didn't play their best basketball that night. But what happened? Then came Game 3.
But what happened in this game? How about Isaiah Thomas? The hip injury in the second half.
And I think that wasn't the first time that he had a problem with his hip either. He might have hurt it earlier in the playoffs. But now that he aggravated it in Game 2, he's now out for the rest of the series. We would have thought that this would be curtains for the Celtics.
Yep.
No one foresaw what happened in Game 3. Cleveland took a 20-point lead. And then what happened when halftime came around? They made the necessary in-between halves adjustments that they were supposed to. They played terrific defense on LeBron. they wound up.
Stifling Cleveland at the three-point line.
Yep.
Cleveland had
while also doing much better from the three-point line on their own, and getting a great game from Marcus Smart, getting big shots from Kelly Olynyk, and probably the biggest shot of the game was from Avery Bradley.
I think Jonas Jerebko also had a big shot, baseline jumper that made it 108, 106. Then Kyrie Irving goes in, driving the lane to tie the game at 108 apiece. And then Bradley, as you mentioned, they get the final possession with 10.2 seconds to go in the game. And they milk they take a timeout. They get the ball in their half of the court. They milk every second. And then, of course, Bradley comes from the left side with an awesome jumper from the three-point range and banks it in with 0.2 of a second, and they win 111, 108. The game is now the series is going to a game 5.
Yep.
Did you foresee this happening?
I definitely did not foresee Game 3 happening the way it did, but you know what? Give the Celtics a lot of credit. They did exactly what they were supposed to. Now Cleveland's on their heels right now. I mean, granted, the Cavaliers still have the lead in this series, but they had their chance to go for the knockout punch after halftime, and they didn't get the job done. And most importantly, the job they did on LeBron James. Only 11 points in this game.
And 6 turnovers. That's the other thing, too. The fact that they forced him to turn over the ball 6 times in this game and reduced him to 11 points when before that he was on a 35-plus tear for 8 straight games. That's insane in and of itself right there. And they ended Cleveland's playoff winning streak going back to last year at 13 games.
Yep.
And they prevented them from being the 4th team in NBA history to start the first 11 games with a victory. Because, of course, their counterparts, the Golden State Warriors, who are playing actually tonight, playing Game 4. But let's go more into Cleveland. Tomorrow night, they play Game 4 at home. If Cleveland is to win, what adjustments do they have to make?
What adjustments do they have to make? Number one, contain the inside against Al Horford, because he had a very, very quiet yet productive game last night, which means try and guard him on the perimeter, because he was launching some shots from long range last night, and also he had his shots that he made from basically a couple of feet away. So they have to take away the Celtics' inside game. Number 2, go after Marcus Smart. And number 3, attack the point guard spot. And that's where Kyrie Irving comes in. Now that Isaiah Thomas is gone, that's another thing. The Cavaliers did not take advantage of Isaiah Thomas's absence. He's gonna be a real void that the Celtics are gonna miss for the rest of this playoff run, however long it lasts.
And if I'm Boston and my 3 points are, 1, do what you did in the second half. Those adjustments, basically stifling LeBron from scoring any easy bucket, especially from three-point range. And you got to have the perfect height advantage to guard him. You can't have a guy who's like 5'8" guarding him whatsoever, because you don't want to have any mismatches against him. And you got to prevent Kevin Love from getting those easy trays as well. In fact, the entire team, you got to stifle him at the three-point line, stifle LeBron, and you got to come up with those amazing baseline jumper shots, too. And Avery Bradley has to have yet the performance of a lifetime tomorrow night. So that's how Boston will win. Now going to the Western Conference, you have the Golden State Warriors, San Antonio Spurs, and Game 2 was where basically things took a turn for the worse. This was the Kawhi Leonard, oh my God, he just got injured again. He's pretty much out with his ankle injury. Stephen Curry, 29 point. Draymond Green had a 13.9 rebound, 6 assists, 2 steal, 2 block performance. Patrick McCaw, the rookie, had an 18.5 assist performance from the bench, shooting 6 for 8. And, Kevin Durant had 16 points. Unbelievable. And Jonathan Simmons was maybe the only bright spot for the Spurs, but they still lost 136-100.
I think you could argue that the real turning point was the second half of Game 1 when the Warriors made their run. The Spurs had their chance to really send a message in Game 1, and they completely self-destructed. In addition to losing Kawhi Leonard for who knows how long, because ankle injuries in the playoffs are no joke. Of course, there have been guys who've been able to play on a bad ankle before. Look at what Isaiah Thomas did for the Pistons against the Lakers almost 30 years ago, scoring 42 points on an ankle that was the size of a softball.
But I'll tell you, there's no way they're going to risk having him come in because he is the future of their franchise. In fact, he was just recently announced this week to be one of the 3 candidates for the MVP award, along with Westbrook, along with Harden. But yet LeBron James is not even in the conversation, which still pisses me off. But that's another story right there. But in this particular series, the Spurs without Leonard is like peanut butter without jelly. It just makes no sense. I know that probably made no sense to some people, but anyway, it's not a good thing not to have him on because he's your defensive player and your offensive guy. He does everything. Can shoot from threes. He can make those baseline jumpers. He's good at rebounding inside. He's your everything on this
This
team.
is where LaMarcus Aldridge comes in, and right now LaMarcus Aldridge has had a rather quiet series.
Very quiet. Like Ginobili actually in Game 3 had a better performance than he did with 21 points. You know, you can't call on Ginobili, who's near basically the end of his career, to do everything for this team. He's not. It's not 5 years ago where he was.
No.
You know.
And 5 years ago, at least he had Tim Duncan with him. But now Duncan's retired. Ginobili's approaching the twilight of his career. Same thing with Tony Parker.
Who's out for the playoffs.
Yeah, and LaMarcus Aldridge signed that big contract because he wanted to prove that he can be the guy on a championship team. Well, right now, the Spurs are getting a lesson taught to them by the Warriors, who I think are going to wrap this series up tonight, which means they're going to go undefeated in the Western Conference playoffs.
And they won, actually, 120, 108 in Game 3. Kevin Durant had a 33-point, 10-rebound performance. And yet, tonight is Game 4. So if you're the Spurs and you want to win this game, what's your hope?
The hope is that Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant all get kidnapped and held hostage for ransom by Spurs fans.
Oh,
but
like
that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Remember that movie that took place in that same scenario? You had Dan Aykroyd, and
I remember.
It was about the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, it was called Celtic Pride.
Yep. So that sounds just exactly like that. That would actually not that I would want that to happen, but that's the only chance. Other than that, it's like the Vince McMahon theme song: "No chance, no chance in hell."
Yep. And if the Spurs, but all kidding aside, if the Spurs want to win this game, number one, they have got to take away the Warriors' 3-point game some way, somehow. Number two, get the ball inside to LaMarcus Aldridge, because somewhere down the line, Aldridge is going to have himself a really good game in a really, really big spot.
Yeah, other than that, though, honestly, in all seriousness, there's no way the Warriors lose this game.
No.
They win this game, they wrap it up, they go to the NBA Finals, and they get a nice rest waiting on the winner of Cleveland and Boston. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping Boston actually wins. I want that series to go to a Game 6.
I wonder what the Warriors might be thinking in the event that the Eastern Conference Finals goes to a long series. They were probably expecting the Cavaliers, but now, after last night, things are really in doubt.
Well, they were playing, it was like a game of horse, literally. You know, for every time that Cleveland won, Golden State would win. I'm sorry, I know I call them Oakland, even though they play in Oakland. Not for long, though, eventually.
Yeah, they're going to be in San Francisco in about a couple of years.
So I still think it's going to end up for the third straight year being Cleveland Golden State.
Yeah.
I think it's still going to be that series again. And this time around, if that's the case, as much as I love Cleveland, I'm thinking Golden State wins it.
Yeah, I like Golden State to win it this year as well. And now that the Cavaliers have been knocked on their heels, I'm still a little unsure as to how that series is going to play out from games 3 on out.
It's going to be fun. But let's get into some other news. And recently, a former New York Jet just landed on his feet with a new team.
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick got himself a new deal with the Buccaneers to basically be Jameis Winston's caddy, not just his backup, but his caddy as well. To be honest with you, did anybody really care what happens at this point with Ryan Fitzpatrick's career? We know that Jameis Winston is the guy in Tampa. Fitzpatrick is just going to be there to hold a clipboard and do a little bit of tutoring to Winston when he sees fit.
Well, the reason why they got him, because they let Mike Lennon go. He's now in Chicago, signed that ridiculous 3-year, $45 million contract. after, 9 starts he had in his career with Tampa Bay. Then they had these 3 guys, Ryan Griffin, Sean Renfree, and Sifo Lafu, the rookie.
Wow.
They had 3 guys that they honestly were like, these are not the type of guys that I would want in the event anything were to happen to Winston being the primary backup. They had to get a guy who has veteran presence in the locker room. Now he's approaching his 34th. He's 34 years old, and this is his 7th team in 13 seasons.
There's a reason why he's played with 7 teams in 13 years. Because he's not any good. He is a Harvard quarterback.
Oh, don't.
No, seriously.
2015, he had one of his best seasons. He had 31
He
touchdowns.
caught lightning in a bottle that year. That was the one
And 2014,
good,
too.
the
before
one
the
year
injury.
where things actually went his way.
But 2014, too, with Houston, before that ACL tear, he was actually having a good season, too, with Houston.
And what happened?
They traded him to the Jets.
And what happened with the Jets? Didn't play one single playoff game. He had his golden opportunity
in 2015.
in 2015 to put them in the playoffs. And what happens? The Buffalo game, he absolutely 100% self-destructs.
3 interceptions in the 4th quarter. I know, I just kind of heard my argument right there, but at the same time, I thought anyway, let's hope it works out. Now, this past Saturday was the second leg of the Triple Crown of horse racing, the Preakness Stakes, the 142nd running. And we all thought Always Dreaming, who was the winner at the Kentucky Derby by 2 3/4 lengths, was going to win at Pimlico, a much shorter track than Churchill Downs. Well, guess what? Always Dreaming not only did he not come in the top 3, he finished 8th place at 10 horses that competed, and it was Cloud Computing, the 13-1 Brown Colt, owned by a New Yorker, by 2 native New Yorkers, and ridden by by Javier Castillo. They won the Preakness by in 1 minute 55.98 seconds by a head.
Yep.
It was a photo finish. Unbelievable over Classic Empire. And it was I just could not believe that took place. And Senior Investment, a 31-1 shot, came in 3rd.
Not bad.
That paid off $10.20, and Classic Empire paid $4.40 and $4, while the winner $28.80, $8.60, and $6. Mm-hmm. So if you put those 3 and had the trifecta, you came out some good cash right there.
There you go.
And so, and the way that it started at the gates, it looked like Always Dreaming and Classic Empire were like neck to neck. Then came at the turn where Always Dreaming kind of ran out of gas and fell all the way back, while it looked like Classic Empire, was going to win. But that race with Always Dreaming took a toll on Classic Empire, and Cloud Computing just snuck in at the very end by a photo finish. And now the next race coming up will be the Belmont Stakes. The horse that won Cloud Computing didn't compete at the Kentucky Derby. The first horse to not compete at Kentucky but yet win the Preakness since 2009, when Rachel Alexandria, the filly, won that year. So it's really it's very exciting. It's the 2nd straight year. No Triple Crown winner will even be determined.
And it could be another 37 or 38 years before we have another Triple Crown champion.
Like American Pharoah. So whoever was there, and if you have the ticket stub, save it.
Yep.
That's history right there. And there was a record crowd actually at this Derby too. 142,000 people, and they had a record amount of betting, $42 million
Wow.
worth of wages. Going into boxing this past Saturday at Madison Square Garden, Terrence Crawford, of course, got a 10th round knockout of the Dominican Felix Diaz, the only Olympian from the Dominican Republic that's boxing.
Yep.
You know about Felix Diaz from your...
Yes, I do. I do know about Felix Diaz. He's a promising fighter. Unfortunately, he had a setback this time, but hopefully he'll be able to bounce back going into his next bout.
It was so bad that his own trainer had to basically literally throw in the towel after the 10th round, and Felix Diaz just got a huge win. and got some nice knockouts, in the junior welterweight division. They're looking, his promoter, Bob Arum, is looking for, and that name is very familiar. He's a very big name in the world of boxing, with Julius Indongo. It's not going to be Manny Pacquiao anytime soon. And then one of the great stories, this guy from Mexico, Beltran, Raimundo Beltran from Mexico, got a huge second-round knockout of Marcelo, and because of that, it was so impactful. It pretty much knocked him to the ground, and Beltran's people is hoping that with that victory, it would give him the green card that he needs to permanently stay in this country. Because typically, they're looking to, if you win an Oscar, if you win the Pulitzer or any award or a boxing match, maybe the U.S. government will consider that as a way for you to get a green card to stay in this country. And he's got his kids who are American citizens to think about too. I'm hoping that situation gets resolved. But you got to love boxing in Madison Square Garden. It's fun. At the AT&T Byron Nelson, Billy Horschel edges the Australian Jason Day on the first hole playoff with an 18-foot birdie, despite the fact Jason Day had a 4-foot par putt that went to the left side past the hole. But Billy Horschel wins the race, wins this prestigious tournament, and they're ending their run in Irving, Texas. They're moving to a new facility next year.
There you go.
So congratulations to Billy Horschel on that victory. And then yesterday, from the Rosemont Arena, and from Rosemont, Illinois.
Yeah, they had Backlash take place, and from what I understand, there was some rather unflattering things being said about Jinder Mahal winning the world heavyweight title.
I think that to those people that said anything unflattering, I understand they don't like the fact that he has these two guys, his goon squad, if you will, the Singh brothers, doing his dirty work. But that's a part of wrestling sometimes. It sucks that you see this happen, but this is part of the gimmick. That's the storyline. He's there to help them. But at the end of the day, he did the collage, which is sort of it's like a crazy twist move that he does into sort of a rock bottom. And he spoke actually in his native tongue and in English, Punjabi.
I see.
And yes, he wears a turban, folks. He's Indian. Get over it. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but stop complaining about the fact that he's from a different country, speaks a different language, and is different than the prototypical wrestlers that you've seen in the past. You guys been clamoring for years, talking about how you want a different wrestler. You want change. Well, guess what? WWE has given you that very change, and yet some people are still complaining. The universe will never, ever be happy.
Well, I personally think it's a landmark moment for WWE to have a wrestler of Hindu descent as their world champion.
First time ever.
There you go. They just made history.
Oh, actually, no. I think the Great Khali was the first. He had a short run as champion. But honestly, no offense to the Great Khali, I think he was good for his time. But Jinder Mahal, to me, is more marketable from India than the Great Khali is.
Yep. And don't be surprised if you see more Punjabi wrestlers make their way into the States, because I mentioned before that WWE did a little tryout in India. They had this one guy do 50 consecutive rolls as part of his tryout. They've got some really good athletes in India. Very
amazing athletes. They're exploring in India, China, Japan. Speaking of Japan, last night, Shinsuke Nakamura made his WWE in-ring debut on the main roster at Backlash against Dolph Ziggler, and he did the Kinshasa, which is sort of a crazy move where you take your right leg, you kind of bend it in a weird way, and you just hit it right on your opponent's temple and knock him out. And he does this thing called strong style. It's very hard, deliberate strikes. It can be slow and methodical at times, but the impact is felt all over your body. And he is the king. This was a guy who wrestled at the age of 19 coming out of Japan. He's really one of the greatest ambassadors to Japan. And his theme music is exciting to listen to. The fans absolutely love him. You should hear when they chant along to his song. You don't even need music. The fans do it for him. Dolph Ziggler is the guy that they use to help push other wrestlers over, to that next
yeah.
level. That's what he's become now. He's no longer the guy that's going to be the main event wrestler anymore.
Yeah.
He's at that point, just like Randy Orton now. He's a veteran too, but I think he's now going to be the type. He's going to get a rematch though with Jinder Mahal. That's without a doubt. But he's not going to be winning anytime soon. Eric Rowan and Luke Harper fought each other, former Wyatt brothers. Luke, of course, won with that crazy twisting clothesline. The United States title was on. Kevin Owens defeated AJ Styles, but the weirdest possible way. They're in the outside of the ring. Unfortunately, AJ Styles had his foot caught on one of the wires in one of the tables.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't get back into the ring in time for the count out. Got counted out, so they're going to have a fight again for sure.
I wonder if that was by design, though.
Oh, for sure, because they didn't want Kevin to, lose yet again the title when he just won the title 2 weeks ago from Chris Jericho. So they want to give him some time to have the championship, but really build this feud with AJ. And they had an A-plus match. They really did. Then they had the 6-women tag team match. The Welcoming Committee, which is Tamina Snuka, Carmella, who, again, I hate that she's called the Princess of Staten Island. She's not my princess. And you had Natalya, the cat lady. She has a lot of cats. Awesome lady. And, of course, from the Great Hart family, the Dungeon, defeating Naomi, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte, with Natalya doing the sharpshooter on Becky Lynch. Natalya's uncle has some memories, though, at that arena. Remember the match against Stone Cold? One of the most brutal matches?
And if I'm not mistaken, you're probably referring to Jim the Anvil Neidhart, correct?
Well, no, Jim the Anvil is her father.
Yeah.
Her uncle is Bret the Hitman Hart.
Ah, that's right. Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Wasn't that the famous match where Stone Cold was basically busted open?
Yep.
And he wound up being put in a sharpshooter? And there
Exactly.
was that famous video shot of him crying out in pain while all bloodied.
All bloodied, like from all over his bald head. He was bloodied and beaten. This was a part of the Attitude Era.
That was brutality at its finest.
And its worst. But yet it was kind of apropos that his niece did the sharpshooter at the very same place to get the victory.
Yep.
And then Sami Zayn defeated Baron Corbin with the haluva kick. This is one of the most insane moves. It's like almost, one of those kick moves that you saw like Hulk Hogan do before he did the leg drop.
Yeah.
Except he runs to his opponents at the corner with that type of kick, knocking you in the side of your head. And it's like getting hit in the head with a baseball bat like 20,000 times.
Yeah.
And then the SmackDown Tag Team Championship, you had the team of the Usos defeating the team that looks like something out of Magic Mike, Breeze Dango.
Oh, brother.
And Tyler Breeze, with the many costume changes. He was a grandma at one point. He was an old man at one point. And then he was himself.
All right, now, is this all part of his gimmick, or was he doing all those costume changes to be part of a music concert or something?
It was a gimmick. It's a terrible gimmick. It's one of the dumbest gimmicks. I'd rather watch The New Day than watch Breeze Dangle. Let's put it this way.
Well, they need to clean up these acts of all these gimmicks because, quite frankly, they've become a little bit tiresome.
If I'm WWE, I should put Luke Harper and Eric Rowan back together as a tag team.
Yeah.
That would make more sense than having them as adversaries. And they could actually challenge the Usos for the tag team championship.
Yeah.
So that is completely, utterly asinine and stupid. And then the Perfect 10, Ty Dillinger in the kickoff, defeated Aiden English, one of the only wrestlers that actually can sing.
Yeah.
With his crazy finishing move. And that's all the action at Backlash. The next pay-per-view coming up is Extreme Rules. And for the first time ever, to determine a contender for Brock Lesnar, they're having a fatal 5-way match.
A fatal 5-way match, I see.
They're having Samoa Joe. They're having Finn Balor. They're having him, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Bray Wyatt.
Interesting.
In a fatal 5-way to determine who will face Brock for the title. Most likely, I'm guessing they're probably going to push Roman to win that match.
As usual.
Because that's why WWE doesn't like Roman.
Yeah.
You should hear the way they hate and boom, how they celebrated him being injured by Braun Strowman. By the way, Strowman, he's out for 6 months.
Yeah.
He had a brutal arm injury, so he's on the shelf. Now let's go into the English Premier League, which ended its season yesterday.
Yep. The season officially ended yesterday with Chelsea as the Premier League champions, which means that all the drama that's left in English soccer is for the FA Cup.
And they did win against Sunderland 5-1. Willem at 8 minutes, Eden Hazard from Belgium at 61, Pedro at 77, and Mishni Basturiat at 90 plus 2. While Javier Manquillo was the only one for Sunderland and scored in the first 3 minutes of the game. Manchester City defeated Watford, City yesterday with 4-0. And then you had Tottenham defeating Hull City 7-1. That's embarrassing to say the least. 2 goals by Harry Kane. Actually, a hat trick by Harry Kane. Leicester City beat AFC Bournemouth with actually it was a tie at 1-1. Manchester U defeated Crystal Palace 2-0. Josh Harrop at 15, Paul Pogba at 19. Arsenal, the Gunners, defeated Everton 3-1. Liverpool defeated Middlesbrough 3-0. Stoke City defeated Southampton 1-0. Swansea defeated West Bromwich 2-1. And West Ham United defeated Burnley 2-1. Mm-hmm. And now the thing is, the next season actually will begin in August.
Yep. Which is just 3 months from now.
These soccer players, they're lucky if they get a month to rest.
Yeah.
I mean, lucky considering they don't not only have to play in clubs, they play for their countries, their cities.
Yeah. In fact, after the FA Cup, a lot of these guys are going to be in training probably for either friendly matches or maybe for some European qualifying or
UEFA, that's right. Yeah.
UEFA qualifying, which reminds me, with Chelsea having won the Premier League, I think Tottenham was the team that claimed second place, which means they have a spot in next year's UEFA tournament.
That's right.
Because the top 4 teams in the English Premier League automatically qualify for spots in the UEFA Cup. It's either the UEFA Cup or the Champions League.
And the teams that do the worst or don't do well this year
get relegated.
Yeah, out of the English Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to wait, I think, a year or so to be considered for admission back into the Premier League. So my team, Newcastle United, didn't play this year in the English Premier League because they did so terrible last year.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they'll come back this coming season. Now, for baseball, the New York Mets this past week lost all 3 games against Arizona.
Yeah.
And lost yesterday against the Angels embarrassingly and won the first 2 games of that series.
Yeah, but yesterday's game was just a complete and utter embarrassment for them. Mike Trout basically showed why he is the best player in the game today. After being held in check for the first 2 games that the Mets won, Trout wound up having 4 hits in yesterday's game, including this monster 2-home run that he hit to center field. And it's gotten to the point where the Mets are basically just hanging by a thread now with their pitching staff. They've got one injury after another that is holding them back game after game after game. And this weekend was no different. I mean, just yesterday, they got a waiver wire pickup, Tommy Malone, to start for them.
Which is really not inspiring, to say the least. And the fact is, Gazelman has been relegated to bullpen duties.
And he's actually pitched well coming out of the bullpen ever since he got demoted from the starting rotation because, quite frankly, he just pitched terribly as a starter. But ever since he got to the bullpen, he's been able to make the necessary mechanical adjustments, and he's been much better.
And this other guy, Paul Sewald, 14 strikeouts, 1 walk in 11 innings that he's done so far,
Yeah,
too.
just recently got called up from Las Vegas. But right now, the Mets really are hanging by a thread. They've got guys on the disabled list and other guys that are basically
waiting to get
holding
injured?
the fort just to let the other guys make their return. Although there is a possibility that Yoenis Cespedes could be making his return sometime this week from the DL. But tell you what, though, one guy who's been really playing well for them, and he's been taking over one position after another, TJ Rivera, the Bronx kid who has just been a revelation for them going back to last year.
Which is really good, and at least he's trying his best. Flores is making some contributions. And right
Although
now,
Wilmer Flores made this really bad error, which opened the floodgates in yesterday's game.
unfortunately, but you know what? At least he's trying. Considering what they have, we know this is the year where basically not just them, but every other team besides the Nationals in that division are going to pack it in. The Nationals are pretty much going to take the NL East for sure. It's a done.
Yeah.
At this point, it's pretty much a done deal. This week coming up, they're off today, but they start a 3-game set at home Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday against San Diego, and then they head to Pittsburgh this coming weekend.
The San Diego series is a series that the Mets should sweep because the Padres right now are the single worst team in baseball. They have 0 pitching. Right now, their offense consists of Will Myers, who's a .280 hitter, has supplied just a teeny-weeny bit of power, but after him, they've gotten no contributions whatsoever from any of their guys in the batting order. This is a series the Mets should sweep.
And what do you think about the Pirates series, though?
The Pirates have been a bit of a disappointment this year, and there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen with Andrew McCutchen. Supposedly, even though he's 30 years of age, they're saying that maybe he could be on the downside of his career. So there's a chance he could be on the trading block. Same thing with Garrett Cole, one of their starting pitchers. He could be on the trading block as well. Quite frankly, this is a week that the Mets should be able to reach 500 because right now they're 6 games under 500. But then again, with the Mets, anything is possible. Keep in mind, just a couple of years ago, they lost, actually last year, the famous game at home against the Padres where they were 1 out away from winning, and Jerry Familia was on the mound. And the next thing we know, this ridiculous thunderstorm hits Citi Field, and then the Padres come from behind to win the game. So anything is possible with them.
You know, I was at the very first win at Citi Field when the Mets played the Padres. Me and my brother actually went there. We went to the Excella Club to dine that night, and then we watched the beginning of the game from there in the lower area. They don't call it the Excella anymore. It's called the Porsche Club. But still, we got to sit in those awesome seats by the glass and see everything. And we were there for the very first victory, which was awesome to be a part of that type of history. And the rest of their division, the Marlins are a joke, a team that still has nobody to claim ownership for. The Phillies, with Jeremy Hellickson just tweaked his back. The only thing good about them is Alan Altair and Tommy Joseph. The Braves, Dansby Swanson is really the only good thing about them. Other than that, they are terrible. Tanner Roark, though, his last 2 starts, he's given up 11 runs and only pitched 9 2/3 innings. So he really needs to step it up. And Gio Gonzalez has had his pitch count has gone over 100 in the last 3 games.
Yeah.
So
that's called being a workhorse. That's something that other major league teams should be able to pick up on. And not having to take guys out after 70 or 80 pitches.
As for the Yankees right now, they had a day off on Monday. They defeated the Royals on Tuesday and Wednesday, 7-1, 11-7. Then Thursday they lost 5-1, and this past weekend against Tampa Bay, I think they lost all those.
Lost 2 out of 3, and then came yesterday's game when CC Sabathia went 5 innings and just barely got himself a victory. It took some help from the bullpen to hold the fort. But tonight, they're having another series with the Royals, and unfortunately, the Royals are giving the Yankees problems again. It's 2-0 in the 3rd inning.
And this is a Royals team that right now is at the precipice of trading some of their players.
Yeah.
Like Escobar and Hosmer. These are guys that are on the final years of their contracts. And right now, there could be talks. They are last in the major leagues in runs scored.
Yeah.
Last in the American League in OPS.
Last in the Central Division.
So if the Yankees can't even beat them and sweep them, then we got some serious issues coming, this week for them.
Well, the Royals still have some guys left over from their championship team. Those are proud guys. They're not going to just make their way in here and lay down for the Yankees. The Royals still want to prove that they have at least something left in the tank for themselves.
Yeah, maybe another George Brett type performance,
Well, we'll see.
And they are playing them 4 games actually today to Thursday, and then they end the week against Oakland. Mm-hmm. And Oakland is a team that this past week, Chris Davis had a heck of a performance for them, and Sonny Gray has had 2 quality starts back to back. So it's going to really be interesting to see what happens with the Yankees this coming week.
And more importantly, the Yankees have the lead in the Eastern Division. And it's been a combination of some really good situational hitting by the Yankees and
Aaron Judge.
From here on, yeah, and a lot of Aaron Judge. And he's already shown that he is not just some guy who can be a slugger. He's proven him to be a really, really good athlete. He can steal bases. He's a good defender. He
Power
made
hitter.
This great diving catch in the outfield to rob a base hit in yesterday's game. Could it be that Aaron Judge could be their next great star to come out of that system?
15 home runs in 38 games. That hasn't been done since the 1940s, I believe.
And there's a strong possibility Aaron Judge could not be the only guy to make an impact with the Yankees from the farm system. I'm already hearing maybe they're going to bring up that shortstop prospect, Gleyber Torres, to the big roster.
It's the fewest for rookies since Mark McGwire did in 1987 to have that type of run. And the Yankees are 12-1 when he scores, when he home runs.
That just goes to show you how much of an impact this guy makes. If he does what Yankee fans have seen him do, the Yankees will be in really, really good hands. And if you've noticed at every Yankee home game, the fans in the right center field bleachers already have their Judge's Wigs hats on.
And he's really exciting to watch. 99. I remember earlier this year watching the game against Boston when they were at home, and he helped lead that comeback against Boston. There's just great performance after great performance from him, and there's more to come. We know he's going to be in the home run derby come July. That's for certain.
Quite possibly, if he keeps on slugging home runs the way he has, there's a strong possibility that he will be in the home run derby. But first things first, though, the Yankees have this series with KC and then the Oakland series coming up to basically wrap up the final full week of May. And then next month, the draft is going to take place.
Yeah, the amateur draft, of course. I believe either Atlanta or is it Philadelphia that gets the number 1 pick in that draft?
I think it might be either the Atlanta Braves or the Philadelphia Phillies. I would have to check to see exactly how they would do.
Coming up this week, of course, in sports, you have the Dean and DeLuca Invitational for golf. For tennis, of course, this coming Sunday, the next Grand Slam, the 2017 French Open Championship from Roland Garros in Paris, France, where, of course, the biggest winner has been Rafael Nadal, who's won the tournament 9 times out of his 14 career Grand Slams. You still have, of course, Roger Federer recently coming off his victory at the Australian Open over Rafa Nadal in the finals there. And, that was his 18th career Grand Slam championship. He may go for 19th. We won't see Serena because she is actually pregnant right now, Serena Williams.
Congratulations to her.
So we definitely will not be seeing her. But she did win at the Australian Open, breaking the record. So definitely congratulations on her personal success, her professional success, and everything. I'm really happy for Serena.
For the record, it's the Minnesota Twins that have the first overall pick in this year's draft. By the way, let's give some well wishes to
Minnesota.
And also some well wishes to Tommy Lasorda, too. Unfortunately, he's in ill health right now, and he's been such a great ambassador for the game ever since he retired from managing over 20 years ago. So good luck to Tommy Lasorda as he recovers from illness. So with about a minute left, I just want to take this time to wish everyone an early, happy Memorial Day. We certainly hope that you celebrate wisely and safely.
And not only that, don't think of this day just as a day, to, do barbecues, which is a fun part. But also this is a day to remember all those veterans in past wars and today, and who are serving abroad today, who are sacrificing their lives in defense of this great country.
That's going to do it for us. So thanks for watching. And also thanks to Eric over here as well, and thanks to Kenny on the other side of the glass. For everyone here, I'm Jaime.
And I'm Eric.
Good night, everyone.
Congratulations, Adam Rosen. Congratulations to him on Thursday from New York Law School. Love you, bro. Peace.